My name is Lisa Dysel. I'm from the UNISA Directorate for Counseling and Career Development. A very warm welcome again to our career event this morning. We'll be focusing on job searching in a changing world of work. With me, I've got my colleague, Mrs. Manu Makanya. She will now please introduce our speaker to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me such a great pleasure today to welcome our speaker for the day. She is a senior HR business partner at Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyer CDH, which is one of South Africa's largest corporate and commercial law firms. She has also managed the firm's overall graduate program and junior associates portfolios across its South Africa and Kenyan offices. She has a passion for organizational well-being through young talent development, leadership training, continuous learning, and helping young people to recognize and realize their potential. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Ms. Boipelo Mathodlana. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Mrs. Makanya. Boipelo, welcome.
Thank you very much. A warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for the warm welcome. As Ms. Makanya introduced me, I am Boipelo. I'm a senior HR VP at CDH. I won't go into a lot of detail around our firm because I think that anyone joining this call has done a little bit of their own research around which law firm I'm from and what it is that we do and practice. But at a high level, we are a corporate commercial law firm, one of the top 5 in the country, with 3 offices, one in Cape Town, another one in Sandton, and our 3rd one in Nairobi. Joining me on this call is my colleague Kauma, who's actually an alumni of UNISA. She has joined us this year as a first-year candidate attorney. Kauma, I'm just going to ask you just to switch on your video and say hi.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kauma. Kauma will talk us through a bit around her own journey at CDH, as well as her journey to securing articles at our law firm as a UNISA student, because I think it's important that we have, an alumni talking you through what their journey has been like, and hopefully you'll get some pearls of wisdom from that, and it will encourage and inspire you to keep going in your search for employment in this changing world of work. Later on, we may even have other members of our graduate recruitment team joining on this call, and they are the first line of contact with students or applicants who submit applications to us. And at that point, when they join us, I will introduce them as well. Okay, so just coming back to the presentation today, job searching in the changing world of work. Before I start with the presentation, I'd just like to give a brief background on myself and why this topic is so important to me. And again, to the Directorate of Counseling and Career Development, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak to UNISA students about how you can adapt and how you can improve your application process so that so that your application is seen faster and better in the market. The legal profession is a highly competitive market, especially at graduate space. Once you're in, it's a lot easier to navigate through the different law firms, through different opportunities. But at this stage, when you're still trying to find your foot in the door, the competition is quite high. And I over my years, especially at CDH, I've been at CDH now for 9 years, with that 9 years primarily within our graduate recruitment portfolio. I've interacted with thousands of law students about how can they find their foot in the door and what it is that actually distinguishes those that get in and those that struggle to. So I'd like for this session to be as interactive as possible and not a presentation in a traditional sense. Please ask questions as we go along. You don't have to reserve them for the end of the presentation, because by then you might have forgotten certain points or nuances to a specific question. So please ask your questions as we go along. Lisa will be checking the chat box, and she'll make sure that we receive those questions. And any one of us on this call can then respond to that. So I'm going to kickstart with my own question. And I hope you guys are ready to start engaging on the chat. My first one is, what are you most frustrated or nervous about in your own job search? So I'm just going to pause a little bit there and ask you guys just to populate your responses. It can be one-liners, it can be a quick sentence. So the question is, what are you most nervous about or frustrated about in your own job search? And Lisa, you can just, once questions are coming up, or the responses coming up, you can just let me know what they are.
I don't see any yet. I've posted the question in the Q&A. Sometimes it takes a few minutes for us to warm up.
Yes.
So maybe you could proceed, but then please post your responses to the question in the Q&A.
Okay. So why I asked this question is because it's important for you to also think about why you are on this presentation today. So what it is that you are aiming to get out of it. And I like to make sure that my presentations also speak to what it is that you have joined the call for. But in the interim, I'm going to start. I see my colleague Malebo has joined. Malebo, I'm going to put you on the spot and very quickly ask you just to switch on video and just say hi. Malebo is our HR and grad support coordinator, so she forms part of the team and is responsible for considering all our applications that come through on the system. So Malebo, just a very quick hello from you, so to put a face to the name. Okay, Lisa, if you can stop sharing, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you just confirm?
We do have 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, Galma, if you can share them with me.
All right, so the first question is from Lundi, and I think they are trying to find out if this will only be focusing on the legal fraternity. The second one was from Anonymous, who's saying...
I can hear you. I struggled to unmute there.
All right. And then the second question came from Anonymous, who's saying they are always frustrated when they apply for jobs and they're not getting anything back. And then also what they're saying is that their experience has been that even though they've applied for work, wherever they've gotten, they are underpaid. Yeah, and they do have a lot of work experience.
That's a difficult one. I'm going to veer off a little bit on the element around being underpaid, mainly because it's not the specific focus of this presentation, but it does touch on it in the sense of trying to understand where it is that you're applying and what kind of research that you've done in terms of understanding what the roles are and what the expectations are. But that is right now a very pertinent question around payment of employees. And then the second one, I think the first question was around, is this primarily focused on legal? No, the discussion we'll be having today really isn't about legal. It's general, so it cuts across industries. But obviously we are coming from a law firm, so some of the examples that we'll be giving insofar as, for example, Galma's experiences are concerned, will be coming from a legal background. But you will see as you listen and as we engage today that it's relevant across any sector of work that students or candidates are applying towards. Okay, great. So let's get into it. Okay, so job searching in a changing world of work, and I will be focusing really, and this is why it goes beyond legal. I'll be focusing really on how are you then selling yourself in writing, because that is how we at all times are engaging with you. Okay.
Boipelo. My apology, there's a couple of more frustrations that came through, so I'm not sure if you would like to hear about them now.
Let's hear them. Let's hear them now.
Okay. There is somebody who posted they're not sure if there are ways to improve our resume if we aren't straight A students. Khomotso was wondering how to get experience if I don't get a job to get experience.
Right.
An anonymous link to that also, I'm mostly frustrated by most jobs looking for experience from people who do not have one. Then there's also somebody that posted, my frustration is going through interviews and then silence follows. After that, without communication, that I have not been successful in the job. And then the final one for now is also not sure which short courses would improve our prospects for placement.
Right.
Okay, and then there's just 2 more that came through. I'm also frustrated by not scoring interviews when I apply. And another one that says job postings also do not indicate the salary and offer, which comes across as looking for a way to undercut the candidate on the salary question.
Yeah, so that's the infamous market related.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get to those. We'll get to those in a bit. And thank you guys for sharing your comments thus far, because we will actually be touching on this. And I think it's great that you've already picked up what how I was actually going to focus on this topic today, because job searching in the changing world of work it's an interesting topic, because it almost assumes that because the nature of the working world is changing, the job searching also needs to have a complete overhaul. And there is some truth to that, but the reality of it is that the basics have remained the same. The way in which you get your application seen is through the primary application with a CV. Where you submit the CV might be different, because that is where different technologies come into play, and that's where different trends within the HR or the people recruitment section come into play. But we'll get into all of those points and some of those responses to those frustrations as we go along. So I'm gonna move my presentation. Okay, so I think at the beginning, you need to ask yourself, what is your end goal? So what is it that you're looking for when you are submitting applications? What is your how and what is your why, right? So your journey to success in terms of what you're ultimately aiming to get towards, you need to accept from the get-go that it will not be linear. Even what I am aiming for in terms of my career, I haven't reached. And to a certain extent, it might even be a little bit fuzzy. And that's okay. But you need to have a specific goal, so that once you have that goal, then you know how to start working towards it. You need to start building the steps towards that. Right. So if you're a law student, for example, many a student always thinks about, I need to secure articles and become an admitted attorney, or I need to become an advocate. But there is so much scope left in between that people just don't think about what other opportunities are available outside of that. And that, again, cuts across many other industries, right? So trying to understand what it is that you're aiming towards and how do you get there, what is the why. Right at the bottom of that image, I've repopulated the title or the advert for this presentation today. But the point here is, if you understand what it is that you're working towards, then it's easier to figure out how do you streamline your CV, how do you streamline your application process, how do you streamline your networking, where are you submitting your applications and how, right? So at the get-go, if you're applying to a corporate, irrespective of what kind of a corporate that is, you're probably applying through what's known as an ATS, that's an application tracking system. It could be something such as a Leaply, it could be something as a Workday, it could be PNet, JobNet, etc. When you're applying through those different portals, what you're doing is you're submitting an application almost, I want to say, a little bit into space, because you don't know from there on what happens. The recruiters or the HR team on the other side is the one that determines how far that application is going to go. And that is, I think, that addresses that first point around that frustration around what happens when I've submitted my CV, but I'm not getting any interviews. You then maybe need to go back to looking at the job specs that you're applying for and understanding, am I even applying correctly? Am I applying for the jobs in the way that they are looking for, right? So Just coming back to a very simple example, many an applicant right now is looking for jobs on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is, right now at the forefront in terms of where people submit applications. But if you're applying on LinkedIn and the application leads you over into some other application portal, you then still need to apply on that application portal and complete that application completely, irrespective of the fact that your CV very easily demonstrates that you are the most eligible candidate for the job. You still then need to go through the process of how that corporate, how that company is looking for you to submit that application. Okay, so then from there you kind of look at looking at your CV, looking at your cover letter, and even your profile. What is it in it that you are doing, or what is it that you're writing that distinguishes you for who you are and what it is that you're hoping to bring to the table or get out of the experience that you are trying to apply for? And really the difference between a good and a great application is how much you distinguish yourself, how much you are able to demonstrate your own uniqueness, because ultimately that is what is going to be the sell between a Kauma, for example, and a Malebo, right? So if you think about something like LinkedIn again, LinkedIn has what's known as like a little profile, a little blurb about yourself. How do you demonstrate who you are in that profile, in that little blurb? And how do you then make that different from a cover letter? And for ease of reference, the cover letter is almost like a one-pager, just high level, telling us a little bit about who you are, demonstrating your knowledge, your experience, if any, what it is that you are wanting to get out of the role that you're applying for, and why you think that you are the suitable candidate. I think here, candidates forget that recruiters, your HR professionals, we are skilled at going through cover letters. So we go through them very quickly. The same for an application tracking system. You'll hear me keep saying an ATS. An ATS goes through cover letters very quickly. And what we and an ATS are usually looking for is specific keywords. All right. Those keywords help us determine whether you're making it through into the next phase or not. But your cover letter is actually for the it's not for the HR person, it's actually for the interest of whoever will be hiring you, i.e. the line manager, the boss, the team that's looking to recruit, etc. Right? So you need to remember that when you're submitting application, yes, the first point of contact, the first pair of eyes that see it will either be the ATS or the HR professional, but the main person who actually wants to properly read through that cover letter is the person that's ultimately looking to hire you for that role, right? And they're the person then interrogating it on a line-by-line basis. So don't play yourself by thinking that, oh, I'm going to have a quick cover letter and hopefully they'll read through my CV and they'll understand that I am the suitable candidate for it. No, because your cover letter is doing two jobs. It's saying to the recruiter or HR professional that, hey, look at these 3, 4, 5 keywords, and these 4 or 5 keywords demonstrate that I am the right person to shortlist further. And then the rest of the cover letter then speaks to whoever will ultimately be hiring you to say that this is the right person and I would like to see them, I'd like to meet them for an interview, etc. And in that interview, that's where they'll hopefully dig a little bit deeper on that. So please pay attention to that, because I think many a time people take that for granted. And sometimes that really is the difference between, the good and the great application. The fact that you actually took the time to show that you are genuinely interested in that position and why. I'm going to pause just a little bit here. I think there are a few more questions that have jumped onto the chat.
Yes, they have. So Sam is asking.
Okay. You don't need to read them for me, Lisa. I can quickly see them. So I'm not going to read through all of them. I'm quickly skimming through them. And guys, this is what HR professionals do: quickly just skimming through your questions, because I'm picking up from them what the themes are, so that as I'm continuing, I can address the specific questions. Okay, perfect. So I've seen through that, and we'll address them as we move along. So this is also then to the person who posed the question. You're frustrated about how you can improve your CV. Where can you get CV templates, and how can you then present yourself more confidently? And how do you apply without having the right certificates, etc. Okay, so let's backtrack it a little bit into your cover letter, your personal profile. Like I said, so it's if for ease of reference, if you're looking at LinkedIn, and I'll show you a quick example now. It's a 3-4 liner, just quick, simple lines about who you are and what you're about and what you're trying to achieve. I've given an example on the screen. I'm not going to read through it because you guys can see it. But this is, a lot less formal, so it's quite informal. It's just it's almost like think of it as like a high-level elevator pitch. So you don't really have 30 seconds. It's not going to take you 30 seconds to read through 3 or 4 lines. It will at most take you about 10 seconds. If somebody was to meet you and say, hey, why are you here? Who are you meeting? Assuming you went an interview room, you say, hi, my name is Boipelo. I'm looking for a PR role, and this is what I think is great about being nice to meet you. Done. Very, very quickly. And that's almost what you're also putting on your LinkedIn profile. So something that demonstrates, and this is important, a positive image of yourself. I think, again, many a time applicants are trying to oversell. So you speak in a very formal, unnatural way. Speak in a way that somebody can very easily identify with you. Again, remember, the first person that sees your CV quite often is the HR professional. The HR professional is not the technical person that's going to be, hiring you for that role or having you as a member of the team. So, for example, when I am interviewing Kalma, I am not as deeply interested in her understanding of the technical legal questions. That I will leave for the rest of my panel, who is made up of, our technical experts, and they can interrogate her further on that. In that first round of interaction, I'm more interested in who is this person? Do I potentially see a fit in my organization? And, again, if you think about it in that way, if you think about who is the target audience at different stages of an application process, it makes it easier for you to also streamline your application. Okay. And then once you kind of go into your CV, then you're looking at what are the most important points that I need a potential employer to know about me. So your basic information, where are you based? What are what are your qualifications? What is your experience, if any? So if you haven't had any, do you have any informal work experience? Or do you have other skills that you think you bring to the table? And how have you gained those skills, right? So if you've done any voluntary work and the like, that forms part of skills, guys. Please, no skill is a wasted skill. So if you have never had any type of formal work, that is okay. Still think about what skills have you gained. Even in the last 2 or 3 years, there were plenty of skills that people could build working and or studying remotely. And I think UNISA students, I think I had this conversation either with Kalma or another one of our UNISA candidates. I think many a time UNISA students take for granted the vast number of skills that you have to possess in order to study in the way that you do, and access opportunities as a student that's sitting at another public university attending lectures on a daily basis. You have a different level of skills and experience, autonomy, for example, that a student sitting at another public university doesn't. So you need to really play up to those. And then really the second point to why your CV is important, it's to give an opportunity to the recruiting manager as well as the hiring manager an understanding of what it is that you have developed over the time that you have. Obviously, you don't want it too long. Say for age, your CV really needn't be longer than 2 lines. I mean, sorry, 2 pages. 2 pages, 2 lines. So, and obviously, the older, more mature you are, and maybe the more work experience you've had, you might have a longer CV, longer than 2 pages. But that really is if applying at a very senior positions. The average person applying at graduate level really needed to have longer than a 2-page CV. Even if you've had a vast amount of experience, what happens is with age, you start realizing certain roles I can remove off of my CV, but I can maybe talk about them as a one-liner, either in my skills or in my cover letter. And if you then make it into interview, you can expand further on those if you're questioned on that. Okay. So after this slide, I'm going to pause a little bit and give Gauma an opportunity to speak. But just general tips for your CV. Always make it neat. Gauma, I'm just going to ask you to switch off your video. Yeah, thank you. Just make sure that it's neat. Make sure it's in a logical order. Personally, I prefer that your most recent experience is the one that starts first. It personally doesn't make sense to me to start with your oldest experience leading up to your most recent, because at the point in which you're applying for a specific role, we're looking at what it is in your work experience or study experience that makes you suitably qualified for that role. And quite often it's the stuff that you've most recently done. So my preference and my encouragement is that in terms of a logical placement of your CV, start with your most recent experiences. And if you've never prepared a CV before, use the templates that are readily available. Yes, there is no one size fits all, but you know, I'll show you very shortly some very simple examples that you can find. Anyone can access these online. They're very clean, very neat, and I think they kind of are really the standard now. And then importantly, you know, I think everyone knows this, and if you don't, we must still stress it. It is important to be honest and sincere in the information that you've presented in your CV. It must speak to your own experiences. So don't embellish. What I mean by don't embellish, you know, don't exaggerate an experience that you've had. If you've worked or volunteered somewhere for two days, don't put it up on your CV as if you were there for months on end. You know, because what invariably happens in life is somewhere, somehow, somebody starts asking you about that experience because you've presented it on your CV, and then, you know, you get caught out. But I'm going to pause now. I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit. I'm going to pause now. I'm going to hand over to Gauma. Like I said, Gauma is a candidate attorney, and for those of you that aren't in the legal space, candidate attorney, or articles as we call it, really is a period of traineeship for law students within a law firm towards getting their qualification as admitted attorneys. It's either 1 year or 2 years, depending on the law firm that you applied to. At our organization, it's a 2-year internship. And thereafter, our candidates then apply for a permanent position with us. Gauma, just at a high level, if you can just take us through what your application journey was like as a UNISA student, what your experience has been like, you know, applying over the last couple of years, and what it is that you think you did to try to distinguish your application so that it could eventually get seen and then get you to where you are now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Boipelo, for this opportunity. And I also just want to say welcome, everyone, especially to the students that are studying through UNISA. It's actually quite an opportunity, and, you know, it's humbling to have studied through UNISA because, as Boipelo has said, yeah, you're studying at a different level, differentiating yourself from other students that are studying at other universities, spending the whole day at school. And if you're a UNISA student, you're mostly studying part-time. And as Boipelo said, that gives you leverage over others, even though you're all studying towards your LLB. I finished my LLB in 2021. And I see most of the guys on the question and answer session there asking different questions that I can relate to. And the reason why I got the opportunity to study through UNISA was financial issues. I couldn't really enroll into university and go study full-time there. And I also had to work part-time to sponsor my studies. And that's one of the benefits that you get as a student at UNISA, because you get to work and you also get to study. It's been challenging because you have to have a balance between your work life and your study life. And you have to be a strong person with a strong character to be able to do that and still complete your LLB. It's a quite demanding qualification. But I think more so for also other qualifications, it's similar. You need to be able to focus and, get your grades in good shape so you can secure whatever it is that you want to secure to advance your career. During my studies, it was very difficult for me because one of the things that I picked up, and I think most of you guys will relate, is that I would always get comments from people saying, you're studying at UNISA, most organizations don't look at students from UNISA for whatever reason, from whatever that comes from, but they look at other universities. And I would like to encourage my fellow alumni that you don't have to focus on that. Organizations look at the person that you are, and they're looking at different qualities that you can bring into the organization. And when they do interviews, they're not looking specifically at your academic qualifications, even though those qualifications play a major role. And one of the things that I found during my journey was that I focused and worried about how am I going to get into the legal field. And I remember once calling around the recruitment agencies and companies and looking to secure internship. And one of the ladies, I'm actually trying to find out her number again, and just to tell her that, you know what, I'm actually working now. She said to me, focus on your grades, get your grades up and make sure that you get that right. And once you get that right, then you can focus on other things, And so I think it's important, especially for top firms, and I will speak specifically to the top 5 firms in the legal industry, because that's where I am. They do look at that, but that's not the only thing they do. So you need to look at that as well. Improve your grades, make sure that you understand your subject line in terms of your modules that you're studying, and generally be aware of what's happening in the current affairs, because I found that in my journey while I was studying and applying for internships to secure my articles, most of the interviews that I went to, they would ask me general stuff about what was happening in the industry, especially in relation to my career field that I've chosen. And I found that most of those interviews that I did secure, they were actually happy to hear that I know what's going on. But coming back to my journey, never give up. You will get a lot of rejections. If I have to look at a list of rejections that I received during the time of application, I started applying towards the end of 2018 to secure articles. I applied almost every single day and I got rejections. I never got any response from anyone. I think I went for like 5 or 6 interviews and I got 2 back calling me for a second interview, and then it was quiet again. I never gave up. I just kept on applying, and I think some of the firms I applied more than once, and at some point I got to a point where I felt like they actually knew my CV and they'll probably be like, oh, she's back again. But then I kept on applying. Also, what I did was I got in contact with a few people that are specialists in terms of improving the appearance of the CV. My CV, I think, was about 5 pages, and I had to get it down to 2 pages, which was highlighting the things that Boipelo has touched on. And I feel that pointed to what I offer as a person and what I'll be bringing to the company should I join, and if I will fit in, and that helped me quite a lot. But besides that, also what I can say is when I applied for my position here at CDH, I remember in the interview process, Boipelo and Malebu said they had received about 700 applications. And in our interview group, there were 2 of us from UNISA. And I really felt privileged, because contrary to what people say, that when you study through UNISA, you are not going to get opportunities, especially in the big firms. We were there, we were representing, we were bringing our best foot forward, and we got the opportunity to get in there. So in terms of the age and all of that, I think it's subject to companies. But what I would say is, because I've seen there's a question in there that's referring to that. In terms of my experience, I think companies are looking for what you can bring. It's not necessarily that you are a certain age. Maybe they are, but I feel like in our group of people that were interviewed, they were looking at what qualities do you have and what can you bring. I struggled through my applications, but I never gave up. I believed that if I'm able to complete my LLB, I am sure someone out there will actually see my worth in terms of what I can bring in, and also in terms of what skills I have that others do not have. You need to be able to present yourself. You need to be open-minded. You need to be aware of what's going on around you, and you need to have that determination and tenacity to believe that you can do this. And when you do get in an environment where I am now, it's a high-pressure environment. There's a lot of expectation on the fact that you need to be able to perform. Yes, there's a lot of guidance, there's a lot of training, which we get on a daily basis. And contrary to what people say, that when you get into these big firms, all you'll be doing is making photocopies, making coffees, doing assignments for directors. Personally, I haven't experienced any of that. The only thing that I do experience at the moment is I actually do get real work. I get to draft. As you may know, in legal, we draft a lot. I get to speak to clients, and obviously this is with the guidance of my directors, because it's his clients. So you get that, and you get to learn to do the work. So you need to know that when you get in, you're putting your best foot forward. Pay attention to detail in terms of, that's one thing I had to work on, my CV, making sure I don't have any spelling errors on my CVs, the structure of my sentences. That was all very important for me. When I had a look at what my CV was before compared to what it looked like when I had someone professionally look at it, it read exactly what I am, removing the stuff that was not necessary. But also just never giving up. That is the biggest thing that I can say. Just, make sure that you will get an answer eventually. And I think that's the most important thing. Just never give up. Yeah.
Thank you, Kalma. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm going to continue sharing screen, and I see quite a few questions around volunteering and, different types of qualifications. So now I guess speaking to the law students, yes, if you're in your first years, first year or two of your studies, the focus really is on trying to get volunteering experience, job shadow as many people as you can. I think there was a candidate here who isn't in the legal space who asked that he is already volunteering, but he's struggling to get entry-level jobs. To Kalma's point, you need to keep applying. You need to keep applying. You really can't give up hope on your own career. And so maybe what you need to do for the psychology counseling person is maybe then just rethink around which organizations are you applying to, and should you do something differently there? Because if you're applying to the same kind of place with the same exact kind of CV, then maybe you need to refocus. And even where you are currently volunteering, ask someone to have a look at your CV, somebody senior that you probably admire or respect, and ask them if they can have a look over at your CV and what pointers they can give there. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I think a lot of the questions really are around the CV and how you get the CV right, etc. So, like I mentioned, that's a point that we will touch on. Now, I just want to move this so I can see what's happening still on the chat. Yeah. So let's continue. So this was the slide that I stopped at. So I was talking about, getting your CV right, even having it overlooked by someone. Let's go into this point here. So I just want to give you some templates. So this is a template that I literally pulled off of Microsoft Word. I literally opened Word, pressed templates, CV templates, and just picked a simple one that I found. This is a typical kind of CV for not necessarily even a high school student. It would be somebody that is to your guys' questions, a first or even a second year, somebody that doesn't really have a lot of work or even any real work experience. And so you're trying to leverage off maybe some of your experience from high school, some experience that you've had over the last year or two. So this is what your typical CV might then look like. Like we mentioned, the key points, your contact details, where are you based. From a South African perspective, it is still important to also just highlight at least your race and your gender or the like. There is no need really to be including stuff like your ID numbers. No, in fact, I actually prefer that people don't put in your ID numbers. You can just put in like your date of birth, if you feel like you want to do that. And then that personal statement is that profile that I spoke about. So like a simple 3 to 4 liner, just high level, touching on who you are, what you're about, just a positive image of yourself. And then your experiences, if you've had any, and if you haven't had any formal work experience, it can be volunteering work, it can be something that you did whilst you're in high school, and it doesn't matter how long that was, right? The point is that you're trying to show that you've done something, even if those things weren't necessarily with the aim of getting a job. It was just something that you did out of your own interest. And then looking at if you have any passions, things that you do in your spare time. So lots of people like do hiking now. So if you're, I say this to students, if you don't really have any activities that you do, right? And you're like, in my spare time, I'm watching TV. How to make that clever? Like, so you're watching TV. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Are you watching TV? Can you at least make it sound interesting? Like you're watching TV, but you are watching, if you're a law student, crime series. If you're a medical student, or you're watching maybe some medical shows, because that gives you in your head an idea of what your field would be like. So just always think about, again, guys, always think about who are you aiming to read this document. The person reading this document is trying to get a sense of who you are and why you're potentially the right fit for the job. So you're not just telling them things like ad hoc, like you're hanging out at a coffee shop, or, like socially, you're telling people something that you think if they were to ask you further about this, then you are comfortable to speak about that in the context of, this would potentially become my employer. This would potentially become my colleague. So please always be mindful about that. You're not just putting stuff in your CV for its own sake. You're putting stuff in your CV because you genuinely want the person who's reading it to get a sense about who you are, what you're about, and importantly, why you are the right person. So if you think about it in these 3 points, you're trying to show in your CV that you are competent for the role, or you have the potential to be competent for the role. That you will be committed to it, and that will be based on your skills, the structure and the layout of your CV. And you're also then trying to show that you are compatible in terms of a people engagement perspective, right? So always think about that. And then your skills, I'll touch on that in another slide. But your skills you would have actually spoken about in a lot more detail, most likely in your cover letter. And you don't need to talk about all your skills, but if we're looking at this example on the screen, Michael here has that his skills are, he's highly skilled in terms of his organizational skills, problem solving, conflict resolution, but he doesn't tell you how. So in his cover letter, and remember guys, the cover letter is the one that's either half a page or a full page. In his cover letter, he's expanding a little bit on that. So my experience as a library assistant in high school helped me to, develop really good organizational skills because of what a librarian has to do. You really need to be quite concise, you need to know what you're doing, etc. Problem solving, he could have said, when I was an equipment manager in the local football club, a lot of conflicts between team members. And again, this could have even been socially. In a social football club, for example, I had to, in my role, had to manage balancing between being a member, so a player, but also having to manage like the demands of the rest of the team, because we needed people to have their kits needed to be clean, everybody needed to attend practice so that You could play a certain amount of games. And again, these might seem like very simplistic examples, but in the reality of it, when you guys start applying for jobs, you're having to use your own real life experiences to sell or to brand yourself. And so you're having to think about, what are all my experiences put together that I would like to put on my CV and show that I am the right person. And again, for those of you who joined late, I'm going to keep reinforcing this point. You really, really want to show that you want to show these skills to the different types of readers that are looking through your CV. The ATS, so the ATS being the system. So this is like the bot, not even the HR professional, the bot that's trying to pick up keywords. And the bot might be looking for a word like problem solving, conflict resolution, assistant, law student, third year. And then the recruiter, the HR person, is now looking at, okay, cool. What more does that person bring to the table? And they might pick that up from the personal statement, as well as a little bit more around maybe your academics. So like Galma touched on, your academics are important. Depending on when you're applying, certain places do require you to submit your supporting documents, such as your qualifications. Other places don't require you to submit that from the get-go. They might ask for that at a later stage, in the same way they might ask for references at a later stage. And then finally, the person who's ultimately recruiting for a role, so for the vacancies, so the hiring manager, the team leader, the technical expert, etc., they are now looking a little bit more deeply into, okay, so you say you've got all the right skills and experience. Now show me that you are going to be compatible in my team. Okay, so just constantly think about that when you are looking at your CV. Okay, this template here, I really like. I think Microsoft did like the Lord's work when they integrated this, because when you open Microsoft Word templates, it automatically populates this thing on the right called CV Assistant. And if you guys have like an updated version of Microsoft package, this should automatically pop up as soon as you open up a Word template for a CV or a resume. What this thing does for you guys is it helps you figure out the steps towards the goal. And remember, I started this presentation talking about what is your end goal? What are you ultimately looking to work towards? And if the goal in this instance was to become a candidate attorney, if the goal is to become a psychology counseling person, the goal is to become a marketing assistant, is to become a like a pharmacist, whatever the goal might be. What CV Assistant does is it merges or it picks up roles in line with what you are potentially ultimately looking for, or in terms of what you're applying for, or what it is that you currently have as your current experience that you want to add more onto so that your CV looks more competitive. So what you do with CV Assistant is you populate the roles that you are either looking for or the role that you currently have, right? And you tell it the industry, right? And it works along with you, like in the same way as a normal bot would do. And then it starts giving you examples. It generates examples based on the thousands of CVs that it has on LinkedIn. But what it does is it's also then filtering according to top skills in that sector. So if you're a candidate attorney, for example, it will look at here, okay, if you're a candidate attorney for the last 2 years in the litigation department, there are certain things that you needed to either have as your experience. Maybe you've drafted a pleading. Maybe you have engaged with the master, the sheriff. Maybe you have gone to the magistrate's courts, appeared in a magistrate court, right? So if you're a law student, all those terms should sound familiar to you. So you're either aiming to get that experience, or you're wanting to show that you have that experience if you've already gained it. Now, if you haven't had that experience, why this little, I think it's like an amazing cheat sheet. Why this thing is so amazing is because what it does is it helps you start thinking about, okay, so what kind of experience could I focus on trying to get? So if I am applying to litigious law firms, and candidate attorneys that are at litigious law firms have this type of experience, then what is it that I need to do? So if we use those 3 examples, drafting of pleadings, sheriffs, and then magistrates courts, right? If we're looking at those 3 examples, let's say the first one was magistrates court. What you could then start thinking about doing is going to your closest magistrates court in your area. You don't need to even go as far as a high court, because the high courts it's not like there are thousands of high courts. So you could go to a magistrates court in your area. Every or at least every biggish city has a magistrates court, or every city has a magistrates court. You'll go to your magistrates court. You could just literally sit there and watch cases all day. What you're doing there is looking at how the law engages and interacts on a day-to-day basis. And what you could then do is then start talking to people around you, start talking to the people that work at the courts, start talking to the lawyers that are coming in, the advocates, etc., and saying, hey, can I shadow you? I really liked what you did on, in that matter. I seem to hear you talking about this kind of argument because it's obviously open to the public. Can I shadow you? Would that be, is that something that you would be open to doing? And I think that's also really important for any student, and more specifically UNISA students, because you don't always get the law firms coming onto your campus, wherever your campuses might be, to have like a career fair. So you then have the responsibility of going out and making yourself available and seeing what is happening in my industry. And again, this cuts across whatever industry. So if you're a PR or marketing student, like Google, like go on to what is it? Maybe let's go into like the Lurie Awards, right? The Lurie Awards are like the creme de la creme of this country. Have a look at like, okay, so what's happening at the Lurie Awards? Which companies got like the best awards? What kind of adverts were they doing? What kind of engagement, social media engagement, etc. were they doing? And then like go search for those people. Go to them, email them, search for them, ask, hey, I really like that you guys did this, and that. It really stood out to me. I would like to know, how can I like shadow you guys? Many in industry is happy to have people just come through and shadow. And if they don't allow you to shadow, then quite often they have internship opportunities. And then all you then need to do is figure out what the application process for that looks like, and then start submitting your applications. If you're getting rejections, it's okay. Hopefully in your rejections, you're also picking up like, okay, so maybe I need to clean up a little bit on what my CV is looking like here, there, or the other. Okay, I'm going to pause a little bit here and just check if there aren't any specific questions on this section. This is not a question. It's okay, so let me quickly answer this one. Is it important to have a picture on the CV? No, it's a personal choice. It really is a personal choice. It is, I won't lie, the standard now, primarily because of the popularity of systems such as LinkedIn, which uses your image, because you have to kind of engage. I mean, LinkedIn really is a social media engagement tool. But if you were applying on other more traditional processes or systems such as Career Junction or PNet, or just sending out your CV in the traditional sense, you absolutely do not have to have your picture on the CV. I just want to caveat though that if you do have your picture on the CV, please make it a professional picture. Again, remembering who is looking at your picture, who is looking at your CV. Please don't have a picture where you're standing with 2 or 3 other people. Don't make that person have to guess. They're actually looking at it, the person on the left or the person in the middle. Just keep it as a very clean, professional looking picture. Think about it in the lines of you presenting yourself as you want to be seen, and not always necessarily as you are, because as you are is a job applicant. As you want to be seen is the employee that got the job. So just be mindful of that. I think if you look at this image on this template here, clearly this guy is in the medical field, and if not, he's hoping to be in the medical field, and so this is an aspirational picture. So just be mindful always if you're going to include a picture. that it must be a professional picture in the way that you want to be seen in the workplace, whatever that workplace might be. There's a comment here. It's not a question. I think it's actually just an encouragement to everyone. And it reads, my husband struggled with getting articles because he was over 40 years old when he applied for the articles and studied through UNISA. It's also foreign. He did eventually get his articles and completed them, and then started his own practice, which is now in its second year. And they are getting a lot of briefs. For those of you that don't know what briefs are, it just means that they're getting a lot of instructions, getting a lot of work. But it is still in its infancy and will grow with time. And this person emphasizes in capitals, do not give up, be patient. Don't give up. Please be patient. Ultimately, this is your life. This is your career. Okay. So yeah, and then just that other point around job shadowing, it depends on the company. So companies such as ourselves, we don't do job shadows for students, university students. We offer that to high school students to help them figure out if this might be the path that they want to study in. But for university students, we have an internship program during university holidays. In our case, it is a paid internship. That was ultimately where we hired a candidate such as Kalma from. So it forms for us part of our recruitment process. So we don't, for our process, allow law students to come into the firm just to job shadow for its own sake or to volunteer. No, because for the stature of our company, it doesn't make sense to do that. We're obviously working on very high profile matters. Our clients are the most top tier corporate organizations. If you're working with us, you're getting exposed to that type of work. So even as a job shadow, even as a vacation program student. So so that's how that operates. But job shadows that exist in our industry or in our specific law firm for high school students. But if you do your research, you will find that many other corporates and companies, organizations do offer opportunities to job shadow. So again, it's just going back to doing your research. Okay, this I'm going to zoom through because I think I've spoken ad nauseum on this, but if you're talking about your work and your learning experiences, highlight them. So if you haven't had any working experiences, then think about what courses have you done. There was a question right at the beginning about what kind of short courses can I do to make myself more compatible. Again, align them to what your end goal is. Take courses, free courses available online, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Coursera, etc. They offer all types of online opportunities. And also, don't take for granted what is it that your own university has available. I myself did with UNISA, I did the Thabo Mbeki, the Tamale, I forget what the AML, the ALI now stands for, Thabo Mbeki Learning Institute something. Hopefully Lisa will remind me what the full name is. But that is something that is offered for free. But that is more if you're we're interested in governance and government kind of policy. If you're in that line of learning. So that was something I then did in my earlier days because that was what my studies entailed. And then more recently, I think a year or 2 years ago, UNISA has, in partnership with the USAID, they have what's known as YALI, Young African Leaders. All these acronyms are killing me today. Young African Leaders Academy. So if you YALI is free. In fact, just this 2 months ago, as an alumni now, because I then completed the regional program, just 2 months ago, some of us had then been asked to help screen applications for students from all over Africa wanting to then apply for the next cohort of the online program. So, I mean, there are multiple opportunities, and I still use that. There are days where I'm speaking to certain people and I reference the stuff that I learned through Yali, and it's a 6-week course. I obviously have a full-time job and a full-time life, but it was something that was important, that I was interested in, and I did because I could. And I added that onto my CV, and it just exists there for my benefit. So think, guys, think broadly, do your research. Don't be bound by like, oh, this is all that's available to me. This is all the time I have available to me. Like, you stretch your time out if you really are interested in advancing yourself as a person. Okay. So your social work, whatever volunteer work you do, again, let it be something that you are interested in, that you are passionate about. I think sometimes even passion is too heavy a word. If you're interested in something, you can make the time for it, you can commit to it, get into it, because I mean, what do you have to lose from gaining that experience? So anything that you can put in your CV that you think would be worth you engaging, and also it helps with your network, add that and or do that. Okay. So coming on to your skills, in the changing world of work, this is probably the most important element that we want to see in your CV. I'm going to pause now. Kauma, I know you have a hearing or an arbitration that you're working on, so if you do need to jump off, thank you so much. You're more than welcome to jump off the call.
Thank you so much, and good luck to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Kauma. I am now at the tail end of this presentation, but yeah, in the changing world of work, guys, it really is about keeping up with the trends, understanding what how companies are recruiting and how we're doing it differently, if at all. There's an assumption that all companies are looking at LinkedIn to look at people's profiles. That's not always necessarily true. I think it depends on the nature of the role. It depends on, it really primarily depends on the nature of the role. And it also depends on the flexibility or the time constraints that either the recruiter has or that is required in order to fill certain roles. In our context, I think Kauma referenced that when she was interviewing with us, we mentioned that we were at 700 applications. And funnily enough, my other colleague, Tobisa, was also joined the call, was telling me yesterday that right now we were sitting at just over 700 applications. So we've had our application period or window open in this month of March for our winter vacation program, which is like a 2-week or 1-week internship program in the office. And applications have been open for the month of March. And they've been going through applications, but for every 100 applications that they're seeing, that there are another 100 applicants submitting an application or updating the application. So I just also want to stress on that, because it speaks to how tough the competition is and how difficult it can be to get into the market. So if you're not always getting responses, be patient, but don't give up. Again, just keep on trying, because you're not aware of what's happening on the other side in terms of the people that are going through your applications. So just keeping patience and keep applying, keep refining your CV. So look, I'm not going to read through this point because again, I think it's quite clear. But look at your different types of skills. So your master skills, your technical skills. Your technical skills, you're obviously developing them here at UNISA as you're studying. And then what other soft skills, really important soft skills. And your soft skills refer to what else you are doing outside of your studies. And that's why it's not just the grades that we look at. We really are looking at what it is that you are doing outside of your studies, because that will determine how easy it is for you to integrate into an organization, how compatible you will be with that organization. So understanding what the technical and the mix between the soft skills looks like, that is to you what is most important to be able to demonstrate in your application process. Okay. And then, of course, then being able to show that you're able to be trained up further so that you know, for those of you that don't have any work experience, you're demonstrating that you have the potential to do the role should it be given to you. Okay. There was a comment earlier around confidence and being able to speak confidently. That is a skill that one is always developing. But you develop it by, you know, you have to be practicing it. You need to be. So you'll find that some companies now will also request that you send a video interview of yourself, like the 30-second elevator pitch. You need to practice that, right? So getting comfortable with speaking on a screen, look at yourself in front of the mirror. Remember, I used to do that when I was in high school, and that you just do that even when you're practicing for like a speech. So even if you're like, I'm shy, I don't know how to speak in front of people, because you're aiming to get into an interview, you do need to practice speaking about yourself in front of strangers, even if that's something that you don't enjoy. It is extremely important because ultimately, once you get from that CV into that interview, you're having to translate the CV into like, this is who I am potentially on a day-to-day basis if I make it into your organization. So these are just general, you know, soft skills, top 5 soft skills that anyone across any industry should be able to show. Especially now, it is important that you are adaptable. You know, the world of work is changing. Some places are still remote, others are hybrid. We, for example, are hybrid. I'm home right now. Bauma, as you saw, was in the office. I should be able to show that I can adapt and I can be trusted to continue my work no matter where I'm placed. If I'm in our case, if you're rotating through different departments, if you're working through different teams, you should be able to very quickly pick up on what's required of you in those different spaces. You should be able to show that you can work with a team. Nobody is an island. Actually, that's the point. No one is an island. And to be successful, you need to be able to work with others. And if you know that you struggle to work with others, you need to put yourself in a position where you're pushed out of your comfort zone so that you can engage with different types of people. It's not enough to say, when I worked with a team, it was for an assignment that for one of my modules, we were just grouped together with a group of strangers. Yes, there's an element of that is real and very true, but there you don't really use that. There you're still working towards your personal goal, right? You're like, this is my little part of a project. I'm going to submit this. I expect everyone else to do it, and that's it. But in the working world, there's no such thing. Ultimately, we all have to work towards that same project, and all of us have to succeed. There's no, this one did this part, and therefore the rest of it is just going to go down the drain. There's no such thing. So you need to show that you're able to work in team. You need to think outside of the box, whatever that entails. The way you think outside of the box, you need to have exposed yourself to different environments. You need to have exposed yourself to different situations. And again, that goes back to what kind of extracurriculars, or even in your guys' case, for some of you, what kind of work do you do in your life right now to balance out the studies? Problem solving is straightforward, and then communication, managing expectations, talking in a clear and concise manner. If you know that you struggle with how you articulate yourself, the best way to manage that is to try to practice. You know, find ways that you can improve that. Again, lots of online courses, free, some of them even, to train or to help you improve on that. And then obviously your technical skills are the more direct ones. Those are in relation to what it is that you're studying. You ultimately need to get that qualification to get your foot in the door. Okay, and then I think maybe also in the technical skills, also think about the other wraparound technical skills that influence the qualification that you are working towards. So if you are, yes, thank you, Daisy. Also, Tamali was Tabambeki African Leadership Institute, and then Yali is Young African Leaders Initiative. Sorry, that's just that to that earlier point. But if you think about what are the other wraparound technical skills, so if you're studying law, your other technical skill that you immediately have to then be working on is for research, because you'll be researching a lot. So don't just read your cases for their own sake. For your studies, you're reading them so that you can send back to your lecturer in terms of like what your understanding of that case was. But in practice, you need to show how that applies to a real world issue. So if you were now sitting at a match court, for example, if you're going online and looking at what's happening at the Constitutional Court, if you're reading up what's happening, let's say Business Day, for example, and looking at like what's actually happening in the real world, you start picking up what the things that you're studying, the modules or the work that you're studying, how that applies in the real world. So you need to always be thinking bigger and better. If you're doing a coding and programming, what does that then mean in terms of like, other areas, just again, maybe there, and big data analysis, etc. So it's think further than just this is what is expected of me, and into this is where it's ultimately leading me, and what does that then look like in terms of the next step. So again, going back to my first slide, figuring out that why, figuring out that goal, the how, the steps to get you there. And then finally, on my closing slide, this was not my closing slide. Coming back to your CV, think about your achievements, think about your activities. Everyone is great in their own little bubble. Everyone's great in their own little bubble, but you're having to demonstrate. You really do have to demonstrate that. So you need to show that you are multidimensional. UNISA students, I automatically expect that you know that you can prioritize your time and your interests, and so it's important that you're able to show that. Well-being is an important point right now, because obviously, there's a lot of burnout. People are overworking themselves. People aren't paying attention to their own stresses and how they respond to that. So learn to identify that, so that you're not having to identify that under work pressure, or under even the pressure to get work, because that's also a different kind of pressure that most people struggle with. And then finally, sorry, maybe just on this, sorry, just, okay, no, we're too far forward. Just on this point here, in terms of notable achievements, also just try to keep them to as recent as possible. At this stage, guys, I can bet you there's no recruiter that's trying to think about your achievements from primary school. If you don't have any notable achievements or anything that you're particularly proud of, then let it go. If your notable achievement is the fact that you are the first graduate or about to become the first graduate in your family, note that. That's important, because perhaps the person that's interviewing you, be it the HR professional or the team leader, it gives them an understanding of what is your background, but also what is your understanding of the expectations within industry, because you might not necessarily have had somebody to look up to who would have given you an idea of what to expect in that industry. So also don't take those kinds of things for granted, what your personal achievements are. So just in terms of key takeaways, yeah, it is absolutely possible to achieve your goal even without the most relevant experience from the get-go. Where possible, try to tailor your CV, try to tailor your application according to where it is going, and again, according to who may potentially be reading it. Templates are good. Templates make life a lot easier, but make sure that you are reviewing it, you're cleaning it up, and then please ask somebody that you trust to review it. I'm not sure if the Counseling Career Development Directorate assists with this, but quite often you'll find that there is a section in the university where somebody can help you clean up your CV. So, maybe have them also have a look over your CV. Your education is obviously the most important, so make it worth your reader's time. If there are ups and downs in your grades, assuming you've submitted your transcript, maybe in a 1 or 2 liner, explain that in your cover letter. Like, hey, maybe I really struggled with my first year, or I really struggled to adapt in my third year, and I really only found my groove in terms of managing my studies towards the end, or vice versa. Don't be embarrassed to highlight that info. Don't make us assume, right? If there's something that you are worried about in your CV, don't go on and on about it like now that's the story. But if there are things that you're unsure about and you think it causes confusion to somebody reading your CV, give us the benefit by actually just quickly highlighting it in your cover letter. The last point around ask questions, engage, follow up. Ask questions around as many people as you can, as you potentially can. Grateful that you guys made the time to be on this call today so that you can get this information. Engage, go on those social medias, engage with the different pages, engage with, if you're, for example, on the CDH Twitter page, LinkedIn page, if you're watching our Career Conversations podcasts, go on those things, engage. Don't be scared to engage and ask questions. Send emails. The worst thing a person can do is you've sent them an email, you've sent them a question, and they didn't respond. Then it's fine. You move on to the next. Like, you didn't die for it, right? So ask questions, and ultimately, just bet on yourself, because it's important to you. It is your career. That's going to be it from me. And yeah, just be yourself. But yeah, that's it from me. And I'm going to pause before we close off. I see we've got maybe 10 minutes left. If there are any other additional questions or comments, and I'm also maybe going to give, if they can, I'm going to give an opportunity for Malebo and Tobisa maybe to also just switch on their videos just to say hi to everyone. They can just wave. Again, just putting faces to the names of the people also in my team. It's Tobisa and Malebo. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. Lisa, hand back over to you.
Thank you very much, Boipelo.
Sure, I'll go for the last one that I see here. So the question was, if you haven't been successful through our VAC program, can you still apply for articles? Yes, our applications formally open twice a year. If you're unsuccessful through for our VAC program, for the one VAC program, you can still apply for another VAC program. We do primarily recruit from our VAC program, because then you've had the opportunity to be in office with us, engaging with us. You can complete the different assessments that we have. So if there's an opportunity for you to keep reapplying, please do so. See, there's one here. If we have some skill, but it could be improved, should we still list it in the CV? Absolutely. Yeah, if you have whatever skill that you have that you think really that is your skill that you have, put it on your CV. I think all skills can always be improved. I don't think, especially soft skills, I don't think they reach a ceiling. It says, for example, if we paginate and index court papers, but we feel there must be more efficient ways to do so, we'd love to learn. Should we still list pagination and indexing as a skill? So the law students, yes, absolutely, because it's still an important part of practice. There is already an efficient system that pagination and indexing has kind of been moved online, but you still need to go back and literally go through the admin of going through your file. So basically, for those that aren't law students, so when you're paginating and indexing, you probably have like a court bundle that's this big, and you're literally numbering each page. And why that's important, especially for a CA as the first line of call, it's important because that court document, that file that you're putting together, you're probably putting together 3 copies, one for your team, the second one for the opposing team, and the third one for the judge. When that document, should that document get to court, and the judge opens up that document and makes a reference to a page or we'll call it an index or an annexure, everyone, when they then look at, if that judge says, I'm looking at annexure 21A, everyone's copies when they open 21A should be the exact same thing. If it doesn't, if the opposing counsel says, oh, sorry, I don't have 21A, I only have 21, and I see a 21B, that could be grounds for that matter getting thrown out or postponed. That is cost to a client, right? So you as the CA who had put that thing together, that it was an important role in terms of making sure that the matter moved on as it was supposed to. So yes, they 100% anonymous, still an important skill to be able to write down that you have, that you could still improve on, because really that skill is about attention to detail. It's about how you are able to own your work, take ownership of your work, that you're accountable, that you're dependable. And again, those are also skills, and those are skills that, irrespective of where you go, when you have a performance review, you're going to be judged on that. Were you able to take control of your work? Were you dependable for your work? Did you have attention to detail for your work? Those are some of the small things that you would need to be able to demonstrate that you have. So yes, to that question, skills always need to be improved, but can absolutely be improved on. Should you include certificates in your CVs? That again is just researching where you're applying to. If there's a request if there's an expectation or request that you must submit them, then yes, you should. And if there isn't that expectation, then you don't have to. In public service field, cover letter is not really considered. How can you substitute the motivation? You substituted, Nyana, you substituted with your profile. So that little blurb, so that 3-4 liner, which you can easily put directly on your CV. You can substitute it with that, because that's a quick way for somebody to get a sense about who you are and what you're applying for. I'm also going to encourage you guys. We have a podcast called Graduate Matters. If you go onto our LinkedIn page, if you search for myself or even for my label, or the CDH page, it's called Graduate Matters. And of course, like I said in the beginning, we are a law firm. So the majority of our topics are on legal matters, but on the Graduate Matters podcast, we also try to keep it general in terms of the topics. So you could also go on there. They're very short podcasts, at most between 10 to 20 minutes, just talking about different ways that you can make yourself improve your CV, improve yourself as a junior in industry. So yeah, just want to see if there's any other questions that we could have quickly touched on in this last 5 minutes. Okay. I think that's it, Lisa. Thank you again, everyone, so much for making the time. I wish you everything of the best in your search for work. I hope that your takeaway here is that it is important that you bet on yourself, and that your applications demonstrate that, and that when you do find your foot in, finally find your foot in the door, that you don't hesitate to show that you are the right person for the role. And when the door is closed on you, that you don't give up and that you keep going, because the right one will find you even at the time that you're most frustrated. So all the best, and hopefully we'll even get to meet some of you in future. Lisa, and to the team Mandu, again, thank you for this invitation. We really don't take it for granted. It's been a pleasure to engage with your UNISA students and alumni.
Thank you so much, Boipelo. I'm just going to do a few announcements and then we'll formally end off the session. So from my side, I just want to share with those who are attending that in addition to the event that we've run today, we've got a whole calendar of events planned for the rest of the year. So just in April, you'll see that there are topics such as joining the workplace, conducting informational interviews and skills, the recruitment process and what recruiters consider to be an attractive CV, where to from here, planning for further studies and job search, as well as interview skills. So information about all of these can be obtained on the My UNISA events calendar. So just visit My UNISA regularly to go and check for the links to these events. Then we also just want to draw your attention to a publication called Grad Next. There is a link on the screen where you could download this free publication. You'll see there that it contains a lot of information about personal branding, managing money, how to look for a job, starting your own business, networking, writing CVs and cover letters. So definitely something worth your while to go and check out. Then from our side, the Directorate for Counselling and Career Development, we would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions or feedback and suggestions about these career events or today's topic, please send an email to Mrs. Mandu Makanya. Her email address is there on your screen. If you would want to engage with any of us at Counselling about your career development, also about study skills and personal development, please send us an email to counselling@unisa.ac.za. You're also welcome to book an online appointment if you would want to have a more in-depth discussion about your challenges or your needs that you have. And we also have counsellors available at the different UNISA regional offices. And you are welcome to contact them to make an appointment for an in-person discussion. Our website at www.unisa.ac.za contains a lot of self-help resources about your career development, about study skills, about personal development. So also feel free to go and explore if there are resources available that can help you with those aspects of your life. And then on our YouTube channel, there's a screenshot of what the channel looks like at the moment. We are posting recordings of all of these online events on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe, go and visit the channel to go and see what other topics we've talked about and that we've shared. The recording for today's event will be available tomorrow on the channel. So just from my side, Boipelo and the team, I just want to thank you for what you've shared with us, with our students. You can see from the level of engagement that there's really a lot of interest from us in terms of how we can manage our careers better, how we can present ourselves more effectively. I really appreciated the practical aspects that you shared, for example, using the templates on MS Word, sorry. So I think that is really beneficial to us, and also to be able to ask questions and to see what kind of questions others are posting. But again, thank you very much from us at UNISA, from the Directorate for Counselling and Career Development, and we hope that we can see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Boipelo. We really appreciate your time and your sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Just maybe as the last word, T on the Q&A posted, thank you so much for your time and your insights, Ms. Boipelo. This has really been helpful. And again, thank you to the organisers. You guys are fantastic. So I think on that wonderful note, we hope that you have a wonderful day further and see you again soon.